Imagine this: Bill Wyman, the rock-solid foundation of the Rolling Stones, is sitting quietly contemplating the revelation of long-buried secrets. As the world was enthralled by Mick Jagger's magnetic personality, he remained in the shadow of the frontman for more than 3 decades. However, Wyman reveals a side of Jagger that few have seen before, a man whose egotism and limitless ambition caused partnerships to break down and strain relationships. Wyman exposes the price that Jagger's genius paid for the Rolling Stones' meteoric rise to fame. Behind the dazzling facade was a leader whose tyrannical reign frequently cast a shadow over teamwork and harmed relationships. Wyman's disclosures depict a story of genius born out of tragedy, illuminating not only a rock icon, but also the chaos that surrounded the legend. There was never any smooth sailing in Wyman and Jagger's relationship. Their dynamic was frequently tense, yet the world recognized them as members of the greatest band ever. In several instances, Jagger's inflated sense of self-importance and ravenous desire for dominance clashed with Wyman, the calm and grounded bassist. Although Jagger's ambition drove the Rolling Stones forward in their early days, it eventually started to drive a wedge between the other members. The domineering nature of Jagger made Wyman feel ignored on several occasions. Because of Jagger's penchant for taking credit for the band's achievements, there was little space for the contributions of others, and creative decisions were often decided without consultation. Being a part of a team that frequently felt like he was performing solo was a major source of aggravation for Wyman, who wasn't only upset about the lack of credit. The collaborative attitude that had once distinguished the Rolling Stones was eclipsed by Jagger's craving for attention, making Wyman feel more like an employee than a collaborator. Jagger's problems didn't stop with Wyman. Keith Richards, the band's co-founder and creative partner, and his relationship with him were perpetually contentious. Their union was characterized by intense disagreements and fights for control, despite the fact that it yielded some of the most memorable rock songs of all time. Disputes arose in the 1980s when Richards claimed Jagger put the band's unity ahead of his personal goals. Dirty Work, an album that reflected their broken relationship and their creative brilliance, was recorded at the height of animosity between them. There was an air of animosity throughout because of the clash between Jagger's desire for control and Richards' defiant nature. Producers and bandmates agreed that the sessions were hellish, with Jagger's perfectionist streak and Richards' rebellious attitude making for a toxic combination that could have broken a band. Not only did Richards find Jagger challenging, but so did everyone else. The quiet and reliable drummer for the band, Charlie Watts, frequently took the heat from Jagger. Those close to the band knew that Watts quietly disapproved of Jagger's domineering tendencies, even if he seldom aired his complaints publicly. Watts, who placed a premium on respect and loyalty, felt a strain that was seldom spoken about, but profoundly felt when Jagger's actions went too far. The Rolling Stones were not the only ones that Mick Jagger's erratic personality might manifest in. Conflict and animosity were commonplace in his encounters with other artists and business people. The charismatic vocalist who had once ruled the stage now appeared as intent on doing the same in whichever room he stepped foot in, a quality that drew both adoration and revulsion. Although the public witnessed fun rivalry in the headlines, the reality was frequently much more heated. Some of the most famous musicians of the 1960s and 1970s had problems with Mick Jagger because of his ravenous need for fame. Those who shared his meteoric rise to prominence, such as David Bowie and Rod Stewart, sometimes found themselves at odds with Jagger's fierce competitiveness. These were not little disagreements. They were clashes of enormous egos. Jagger's incessant urge to prove his worth and his reluctance to share the limelight transformed potential partnerships into animosities. David Bowie was involved in one of the most infamous feuds. They were formerly close friends, and their combined star power led to a legendary street dance duet. A covert struggle for supremacy, however, lay beneath the camaraderie. Jagger's brazen, unquenchable vigor collided with Bowie's mysterious allure and chameleonic talent. This competition intensified over time, driven by Jagger's tendency to dominate his contemporaries and Bowie's reluctance to be overshadowed. Their friendship devolved into an aggressive competition, with a hint of animosity in their mutual regard for one another. Just being successful wasn't good enough for Jagger. He wanted to be the best. This motivation frequently escalated once friendly rivalry into full-blown feuds. A pattern emerged in his dealings with Rod Stewart as well. Stewart often clashed with the Rolling Stones lead singer, Mick Jagger, due to Stewart's unique singing voice and ostentatious stage presence. Instead of fostering a supportive peer bond, Jagger dominated the conversation with her subtle criticisms and dismissals. The widespread impression that Jagger was tough and unapproachable was a direct result of his urge to control, which alienated more than simply individuals. Many in the industry saw their possibility for greatness in working with him as a double-edged sword, accompanied with a likelihood of strife. Though it was essential to his success, his passion frequently caused alliances to become strained and opportunities to be lost. These disagreements cast a shadow over Jagger's reputation as an inspiring and self-assured leader. He was as divisive as he was strong behind the scenes due to his ambition, which drove his spectacular rise to prominence, but also showed an unwillingness to share his pedestal. To everyone he met, Jagger was more than simply a competitor. He was an unstoppable powerhouse, a man whose intelligence was equal to his fierce competitiveness. Mick Jagger's relationships were overshadowed by his towering ambition, which reflected the instability in his professional life. Despite making headlines and cementing his reputation as a rock and roll Lothario, his love involvements frequently hinted at heartache. The ladies who crossed Jagger's path were captivated by his magnetic presence and irresistible charm, but they had to fight the constant pressures of his celebrity just to be with him. His many high-profile relationships were characterized by emotional detachment and adultery, and he left a wake of partners who, despite their best efforts, could never truly feel a part of his world. The attraction of Jagger's career frequently overshadowed the permanence of his relationships. In private, the same charisma that captivated an audience on stage would often crumble as feelings of closeness gave way to coldness. His loved ones endured the dual pressures of his job and the public's adulation, a combination that caused them anguish and frustration. The price of adoring Jagger, for many, was letting their needs be absorbed by the enormous, unapproachable persona that he embodied. The burden of his ambition also rested on his family life. In sharp contrast to his emotional absence as a father, Jagger's financial generosity was remarkable. There was little opportunity for him to develop a meaningful relationship with his children due to his career's incessant touring, recording, and public appearances. Although he was financially supportive, he neglected the relationships that needed his undivided attention, leaving behind emotional emptiness that persisted even after his prominence faded. Though inspiring to onlookers, Jagger's quest for greatness had a heavy toll on her. The same obsession that made him famous also made it difficult for people to get to know the real him. The experience was bittersweet for his loved ones, who felt both pride in his accomplishments and the anguish of knowing he would always be out of reach. Stark, the polar opposite of Jagger, could win over millions of fans, but had a hard time establishing the kind of meaningful relationships that bring true happiness to an individual's life. Although his legacy is unquestionably one of success, a sense of loss lingers beneath the surface, serving as a sobering reminder that the quest of fame, no matter how alluring, frequently necessitates immeasurable sacrifices. There is no way to describe Mick Jagger's impact on music other than revolutionary. His charm, intensity, and spectacular stage presence revolutionized the role of the frontman. In addition to being one of the most iconic rock musicians of all time, Jagger left spectators gasping for air with his commanding performances. But this genius wasn't without its price, as Bill Wyman shows. The man behind the swagger and the limelight was a complete opposite, a visionary whose acts were motivated by unquenchable ambition, but who was frequently oblivious to the consequences for others around him. Much of Jagger's controversy stemmed from his obsession with dominating, which also served as the source of his creativity. What might have been opportunities for unification became arenas of ego due to his obsession with control, which frequently overshadowed collaboration. Collaborating with him was like navigating a river. He was a leader whose vision allowed little space for disagreement or concession. Wyman's comments show how Jagger's humanity and genius clash, creating a portrait of a man who could both amaze and alienate. Although the music of the Rolling Stones has inspired decades, the story of the band itself is a tale of perseverance through conflict, jealousy, and self-sacrifice, just as much a part of the band's legacy as any other aspect of their music. Although Jagger's dogged quest to perfection catapulted the band to superstardom, it also left visible fissures. Relationships were frequently left unresolved and strained due to his alluring appeal, which frequently concealed a harsh pragmatism. Looking at Jagger through Wyman's perspective elevates his legacy beyond that of a mere rock god myth. A man who accomplished great things, but also left a dark legacy, is the protagonist of this novel. There was an argument behind the scenes for every revolutionary song that made it to the top. An investment in close personal ties was necessary. Those who stood too near to Jagger's intense light would frequently be burned. Ultimately, Mick Jagger's impact is multifaceted, much like the guy himself. Despite his indisputable brilliance and enduring impact, his story offers a warning against the perils of getting ahead of oneself. Though they may have won the world, the Rolling Stones' tale demonstrates the toll that fame takes on a person and serves as a sobering reminder that even the most famous faces have shadows that follow them long after the cameras stop rolling.